Welcome back. So I've got about a cup of microgreens, and that's about what I consume for a serving. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, but I know my body, and the cool thing about when you're in touch with your food, your body will tell you how much of something you want. But before I finished harvesting these and move on to the rinsing and preparing them to eat, I just wanted to show you a couple of things. While I was harvesting, I found this, and this is what I was talking about with the leaves not being able to get out of the seed pod. See, that little guy just didn't make it and is not going to make it. So in nature and in our microgreen farm, that would be a failure. Now you're also going to find the occasional ungerminated seed. Like, I don't know if you can see them in here, but there's a few around. Like, if I look really closely, I might be able to see 30 ungerminated seeds on the surface, and there's going to be some under the surface that are ungerminated too. But remember, this whole tray probably has somewhere around 3,000 seeds in it. If only 90% of those turned into food for us, if 90% of those turned into food for us, we'd find, if we went through here, 300 ungerminated seeds. So we're getting, in excess of 90% of those seeds germinating and turning into microgreens, into food for us. So don't be concerned when you see an ungerminated seed, when you see a malformed microgreen, and that's kind of what I wanted to show you too. Some of these, when they're growing, they're laying down, and that's because they were looking for light, but because this canopy is so densely packed, they can't get to it, so they wander, and they end up down here, and they're a little bit weakly. So I'm going to harvest them because they're just going to perish. And that one is just a stem now. The leaf popped off. That's okay. I'll eat that stem. It's tender. It's flavorful. A lot of the flavor is in the stem. But these that are kind of laying down, if you can see that, these are the ones that I'm going to harvest for sure, because they might not make it. Maybe they will now that they've been uncovered. But I'm just going to go ahead and harvest them, even if they're not as big as some of the others, just because they're laying down. I want to make sure I get them. Maybe even I might have disrupted them and they're laying down because they're dislodged from their root. And once I grab this stem, if you crush that stem at all, which is really easy to do because these are super tender, that microgreen isn't going to survive. That's just the way it is. So yeah, it's a lot of trouble doing this kind of selective harvesting, and you don't have to do that. It's all up to you. This is your farm. This is for you to decide how you want to grow and consume your greens. But for me, there's this, as I mentioned before, this reverence to the process, this reverence for life, and being grateful for it and getting the most out of it. That's the thing about it that aside from the nutrition, it's the process, and it gets you in touch with nurturing life, and I love that. So I'm going to leave that alone, and we'll go on to how we get these greens ready to eat, because they do have a little bit of dirt particulate from me picking them on them, and I want to get rid of that first. So let me set up for that, and we'll do that. Thank you. Be right back. Welcome back. So I'm going to show you how to clean your microgreens and get any dirt that's on there cleaned off. And I actually did this once and was filming it, and my phone rang, so I thought, I probably should film that again. So these are wet because they've already been rinsed once, but just put your microgreens down into a container, and I like to use a mason jar because this the depth of this jar helps keep the greens well above the bottom so that any sediment that settles out is off the greens. And so I like to just use a fork and gently agitate them, and that will loosen the dirt up on there, and it'll fall down in the bottom. As you see, the microgreens for the most part are floating, and there's only been one rinse on these, and I don't see, well, there's a couple of little pieces of dirt and sediment in there, but not even enough that I don't even think it can be picked up on camera here. It's just so minute. So these are really clean. I do 2 rinses. That's what I found, and I almost never get any grit. Let me get a clean bowl here. Put these in. And I almost never get any grit. I mean, it can happen, but it's not going to hurt you. I used to go out to the garden and just eat things like tomatoes and onions and peas, and especially the onions, I would just brush the dirt off of them and eat them like an apple. And then I'd get in trouble because I'd come in and, "You've been in the onion patch again, haven't you?" Well, yeah. So that's all you need to do. It's really a simple process. I mean, the most laborious part of the process is picking your greens. And if you cut them with scissors, it's not that laborious of a process. You end up with nice, fresh, beautiful. I don't know if I hold this up, if you can see the color in some of these. It's hard to see because, unfortunately, I'm not a professional photographer and I don't have professional lights, but the colors are beautiful. This would go great in a salad, on a sandwich. Sprinkle some on top of some soup. Sprinkle it as a garnish on any dish or the side of any dish. Absolutely intense, wonderful flavors. You know that you're getting a ton of nutrition because of all the flavor when you eat these. And I like to just eat them plain. I might put the tiniest pinch of salt in them, or a little bit of dressing. My favorite is actually a tiny bit of soy sauce, just a couple of drops, and a couple of drops of rice vinegar, and toss that. But balsamic vinegar with something savory in there is also good. There's really not a wrong way to eat them. Just eat them raw. I frequently just pick some right out of the tray, pull the roots off, and snack on them just like that. They're so good. They're so wonderful to just pop a few in your mouth. The flavor profile is intense and deep, and you almost feel the nutrients coursing through your body from that intense flavor. So enjoy your microgreens. Please feel free to call myself. Call me anytime with questions, or message me, or comment on this video. I'm happy to answer your questions. Thank you so much for watching. You have a wonderful day and keep on farming.